Have you ever looked at a picture of an ancient castle perched on a razor-thin mountain peak and thought, how in the world did they build that? It's a question that has echoed through my mind on countless expeditions. We see these incredible structures, these stone giants clinging to cliffs or rising from the middle of a raging sea, and they seem to defy not just gravity but logic itself. These aren't just old buildings, they are monuments to human will. They are silent storytellers, whispering tales of forgotten kings, desperate last stands, and engineering genius that feels almost otherworldly. It's easy to imagine they were built by giants or gods, but the truth is even more astounding. They were built by us. These places pull at the imagination, don't they? They are the real-life settings for adventures we only dream of. Imagine hauling massive stones up a sheer cliff face with nothing but ropes and raw muscle. Picture yourself living in a fortress where one wrong step means a 1,000-foot drop. These ancient engineers and laborers didn't have cranes, they didn't have helicopters, and they certainly didn't have computer-aided design. What they had was an unshakable determination, a deep understanding of their environment, and a pressing need to survive. These forts are not just architectural marvels, they are the ultimate expression of human resilience against impossible odds. The mystery only deepens when you start to dig into their history. Who were these people? What drove them to seek out the most inaccessible, inhospitable corners of the globe to make their stand? Each stone holds a secret, each weathered wall a clue. Following these clues is what adventure is all about. It's about more than just admiring the view. It's about connecting with the past on a visceral level. It's about standing where ancient centuries stood, feeling the same wind on your face and trying to comprehend the sheer scale of their ambition and their courage in the face of overwhelming challenges. This journey is about to take us to some of the most breathtaking and baffling places on Earth. We're going to soar to the cloud forests of the Andes, trek across the blistering Judean desert, and navigate the treacherous tides of the Atlantic. We will explore fortresses that were designed to be unconquerable, places where history was written in blood and stone. These are not just ruins. They are active archaeological sites, and living testaments to the incredible things people can achieve when they are pushed to their absolute limits. So pack your gear and get ready, because you won't believe where these ancient forts were built. So what's the big idea? Why go through all the trouble? The answer, in a word, is survival. For ancient civilizations, the world was a dangerous place. Rival tribes, invading armies, and shifting political powers meant that safety was never guaranteed. Building a fort on flat, open ground was like putting a welcome mat out for your enemies. You needed an edge. You needed an advantage so powerful that it could intimidate any would-be attacker before a single arrow was even fired. The ultimate defense was to build where no one thought you could. This was strategic thinking at its most primal and most brilliant. These impossible locations offered what military strategists call a force multiplier. A small group of defenders could hold off a much larger attacking army simply because of the terrain. Imagine trying to storm a fortress at the top of a single, narrow staircase carved into a cliff. Your army's size becomes a disadvantage, a bottleneck. The defenders high above could rain down arrows, rocks, and anything else they could get their hands on. The location itself became their greatest weapon. It provided a natural moat, an unscalable wall, and a perfect vantage point to see enemies approaching from miles away, giving them precious time to prepare. Beyond pure defense, these locations were also about power and control. A fortress perched high above a crucial mountain pass or a busy shipping lane was a constant, visible reminder of who was in charge. From these eagle nest positions, rulers could control trade routes, tax merchants, and project their influence over the entire region. It wasn't just about hiding from danger, it was about mastering the environment and using it to assert dominance. Our first stop takes us high into the Andes Mountains of Peru, to a place that was lost to the outside world for centuries. I'm talking about Machu Picchu. This isn't just a fort, it's an entire city, a royal estate for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti, built around the year 1450. Perched on a mountain ridge nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, it's surrounded by other towering jungle-clad peaks. The location is so remote, so utterly concealed, that the Spanish conquistadors, who tore through the rest of the Inca Empire, never even found it. The sheer logistics of building it are mind-boggling. The Inca were master stonemasons, but they had no iron tools, no wheels, and no draft animals to haul heavy loads. So how did they do it? They used a technique called ashlar, where they cut stones so precisely that they fit together perfectly without any mortar. We're talking about massive granite blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, shaped and fitted like a perfect puzzle. Archaeologists believe they used bronze and stone tools to chip away at the rock, and then used wet sand to grind them down to a smooth, perfect fit. Moving the stones likely involved hundreds of men using log rollers, earthen ramps, and sheer brute force to inch them into place. The challenges were immense. They built on a steep, unstable ridge prone to earthquakes and heavy rainfall. To solve this, the Inca engineered a brilliant system of agricultural terraces and underground drainage. The terraces created flat land for farming and also reinforced the mountainside, preventing landslides. Beneath the city, a complex network of channels and drains funneled excess water away, keeping the foundations stable and the city from washing away. This wasn't just construction. It was a complete and total terraforming of the mountain itself. They didn't just build on the mountain, they fused their city with it. Life in Machu Picchu would have been a world apart. It was a self-sufficient citadel with farms, temples, homes, and water sources. The residents, likely numbering around 750 people, were the elite of the Inca world, the emperor, his family, priests, and skilled artisans. They were literally living above the clouds, isolated from the rest of the empire, yet at its spiritual heart. But its glory was short-lived. Within a century, the city was mysteriously abandoned, likely due to the chaos of the Spanish conquest elsewhere. It remained a ghost city, a silent testament to a lost empire, waiting to be rediscovered. Now let's trade the misty mountains for the searing heat of the Judean desert in Israel. Here, rising dramatically from the desolate landscape near the Dead Sea, is Masada. This is not a city in the clouds, it's a fortress on a massive, isolated rock plateau. Its flat top is like a natural aircraft carrier, but its sides are sheer cliffs dropping nearly 1,300 feet. Originally fortified by an earlier king, it was King Herod the Great, who transformed it into an opulent and seemingly impregnable refuge around 30 BCE. He built 2 luxurious palaces, massive storehouses, and a sophisticated water collection system. Herod was a paranoid ruler, and he designed Masada to be the ultimate safe house. He knew that in the desert, water is life, and an army can't survive a long siege without it. So his engineers devised a genius plan. They carved a series of enormous cisterns directly into the rock face of the cliff. During the brief winter flash floods, a network of aqueducts and channels would divert the rushing water from the nearby wadis and funnel it into these cisterns. This system could hold millions of gallons of water, enough to support 1,000 people for years, along with their gardens and swimming pools. Yes, Herod had a swimming pool in his desert fortress. The true test of Masada came a century later, in 73 CE. After the fall of Jerusalem, a group of Jewish rebels known as the Sigiriya made their last stand here against the might of the Roman Empire. The Roman 10th Legion, about 8,000 strong, arrived to find fewer than 1,000 rebels occupying an unbeatable position. The only way up was a narrow, winding snake path that was easily defended. The Romans, masters of siege warfare, were faced with a monumental challenge. They couldn't starve the defenders out, and they couldn't assault the cliffs directly. Their solution was as audacious as the fortress itself. Frustrated, the Romans decided to do the impossible. They built a mountain to conquer a mountain. Over several months, thousands of Jewish captives were forced to build a massive siege ramp of earth and timber against the western face of the plateau. It was a colossal undertaking, a testament to Roman engineering and ruthlessness. Once the ramp was complete, they rolled a giant siege tower up to the fortress wall and breached it. But when they finally stormed the fortress, they were met with a haunting silence. The defenders, choosing death over slavery, had taken their own lives. Masada became an enduring symbol of defiance and sacrifice. From the dry desert, our expedition travels to the dramatic coastline of Normandy, France. Here we find Mont Saint-Michel, a fortress that seems to rise from the sea like a fairy tale castle. It's built on a tiny conical granite island about half a mile off the coast. What makes this location so impossible and so brilliant is its relationship with the water. The tides in this bay are some of the most extreme in Europe, rising and falling by as much as 46 feet. At high tide, the Mount is a true island surrounded by water, its causeway submerged. At low tide, it's surrounded by treacherous mud flats and quicksand. Construction began in the 8th century, but it wasn't as a fortress. It started as a humble monastery. According to legend, the Archangel Michael appeared to a local bishop and instructed him to build a church on the rock. Over the next several hundred years, it grew into a major pilgrimage site. But in a war-torn medieval Europe, even a sacred place needed protection. Starting in the 13th century, massive fortifications were added, turning the monastery into a formidable military stronghold. Builders had to quarry granite from nearby islands, ferry it over at high tide, and then haul it up the steep, winding slopes of the rock. The builders faced the constant challenge of the tides and the unstable, steep terrain. They had to build vertically, stacking the monastery, the support buildings, and the fortifications on top of each other in a gravity-defying arrangement known as the Marvel. They constructed massive crypts and halls to serve as foundations for the soaring abbey church above. This distributed the immense weight and created a stable platform on the pinnacle of the rock. The tide itself was their greatest ally in defense. An attacking army would either be washed away by the incoming tide or get stuck in the sucking mudflats, becoming easy targets for the archers on the walls. Life inside was a strange mix of the sacred and the secular. Monks chanted in the abbey high above, while soldiers patrolled the ramparts below. The fortress proved its worth during the 100 Years' War. It was one of the few places in Normandy that never fell to the English, withstanding multiple sieges over 30 years. The English tried to blockade it, but the cunning defenders used the tides to their advantage, launching surprise attacks and resupplying by boat. Mont Saint-Michel stands as a masterpiece of using a dynamic, ever-changing environment as the ultimate defense. Our final destination takes us to the lush, green heart of Sri Lanka, to a place that is part palace, part fortress, and all spectacle. This is Sigiriya, or Lion Rock. It is an enormous, 660-foot-high column of rock that just rises right out of the flat jungle plain like, well, a geological exclamation point. In the 5th century CE, a king named Kashyapa chose this imposing monolith as the site for his new capital. Kashyapa was a controversial figure. He had seized the throne by assassinating his own father and lived in fear of retaliation from his half-brother, the rightful heir. He needed a capital that was not just a home, but an impregnable fortress. The engineering required to turn this rock into a palace complex was simply breathtaking. At the base of the rock, Kashyapa's builders created an elaborate city with extensive water gardens, fountains, and pools. These gardens are some of the oldest landscaped gardens in the world, and featured a complex hydraulic system that still baffles engineers today. Then, on the sheer face of the rock halfway to the top, they carved a gateway in the form of a colossal lion. Today, only the giant paws remain, but in its day, visitors would have walked through the lion's open mouth to ascend the final staircase to the summit. It was a powerful symbol of royal authority. Getting the materials and workers to the flat summit was a Herculean task. There is evidence of post holes in the rock face suggesting a complex system of scaffolding and external staircases was used during construction. On the summit, they built a palace complete with living quarters, audience halls, and a large cistern for water, carved directly out of the rock. The palace walls were covered in polished plaster that shone in the sun, making the entire summit gleam like a jewel. On the western face of the rock, sheltered by an overhang, artists painted beautiful frescoes of celestial maidens, many of which survive to this day, their colors still vibrant after 1,500 years. Kashyapa's reign in his sky palace was brief, lasting only 18 years. As he had feared, his brother Moggallana eventually returned with an army to claim the throne. The final battle took place on the plains below Sigiriya. In a fateful move, Kashyapa descended from his fortress to lead his army on a war elephant. When his elephant changed course to navigate a marsh, his own army thought he was retreating, panicked, and fled. Left alone, Kashyapa took his own life. His magnificent fortress was abandoned and handed over to Buddhist monks before being swallowed by the jungle, its story and its incredible engineering waiting for centuries to be rediscovered. What was it really like to live in these extraordinary places? Life inside was a paradox. It was a combination of absolute security and profound isolation. For the inhabitants of a place like Masada or Sigiriya, the world outside might as well have been on another planet. They were safe from attack, protected by cliffs and walls that touched the sky. This security bred a unique kind of community, a small, self-contained society where everyone knew each other and depended on one another for survival. Their daily lives were dictated by the rhythms of the fortress, the changing of the guard, the rationing of supplies, and the constant vigilance. Sustaining life was the #1 daily challenge. Water, as we saw at Masada, was the most precious commodity, and required ingenious collection and storage systems. Food was another major concern. The Inca terraces at Machu Picchu show how some fortresses could grow their own food, turning steep mountainsides into productive gardens. At other fortresses, huge storehouses were built to hold years' worth of grain, wine, and oil. These weren't just pantries, they were strategic assets, allowing the defenders to outlast any siege. Life was a constant exercise in planning, conservation, and making the most of every single resource available to them. The social structure inside these forts was often highly rigid. At the top was the ruler, the king, emperor, or commander, who lived in the most protected and often most luxurious part of the complex, like Herod's palace at Masada or Kashyap's sky palace at Sigiriya. Below them were the soldiers, the priests, the artisans, and the laborers. Each person had a specific role to play in the functioning of the fortress. It was a miniature, hyper-organized version of the society outside, where duty and hierarchy were everything. There was little room for individuality when the survival of the entire community was at stake. Despite the hardships, there were moments of beauty and normalcy. Children would have played in the courtyards, artisans would have crafted their wares, and religious ceremonies would have been held in the temples. The breathtaking views that we admire as tourists were their everyday backdrop. Imagine waking up at Machu Picchu and watching the sun rise over the Andes, or seeing the tide roll in at Mont Saint-Michel from the Abbey walls. This unique environment must have shaped their worldview, filling them with a sense of awe, pride, and a deep connection to the incredible place they called home. Every one of these ancient places holds secrets. They're like giant puzzles, and archaeologists are still finding new pieces all the time. At Machu Picchu, for example, one of the enduring mysteries is the Intihuatana stone. It's a precisely carved granite pillar that was likely used as an astronomical clock or calendar, aligning perfectly with the solstices. During the excavations in the 1960s, archaeologists found several small pottery shards inscribed with names. These are believed to be the lots that the final defenders drew to determine who would be the last one to take his own life. The secrets of Sigiriya are not just in its engineering but also on its walls. Along the rock face is a highly polished wall known as the Mirror Wall. Over the centuries, visitors have written poems and comments on the wall, known as the Sigiri graffiti. These writings, dating back as far as the 8th century, are some of the oldest examples of the Sinhalese language. As we stand back and look at these impossible forts, it's hard not to feel a sense of awe. They are so much more than piles of old rocks. They are a powerful reminder of what humans are capable of. These ancient builders didn't see an unclimbable cliff or an impassable sea, they saw an opportunity. They saw a canvas for their ambition, their faith, and their desperate need to create a safe space in a violent world. They faced challenges we can barely comprehend today, and they met them with a combination of raw courage, backbreaking labor, and a level of creative genius that still leaves us speechless. These structures challenge our modern notions of what is possible. We have technology and machinery that would seem like magic to ancient builders, yet we often feel limited. The stories of Machu Picchu, Masada, Mont Saint-Michel, and Sigiriya teach us a valuable lesson about the power of the human spirit. They show us that with enough determination, ingenuity, and a clear purpose, the greatest obstacles can be overcome. I encourage you to learn more about these places, and if you ever get the chance, to go and see them for yourself. There is nothing quite like standing on the ramparts of Masada as the sun rises over the Dead Sea, or watching the clouds swirl below you at Machu Picchu. When you are there, you can almost hear the echoes of the past, the chip of a stonemason's tool, the call of a sentry on the wall, the murmur of a prayer in a windswept temple. You connect with the people who lived and died there, and you become part of their story. These forts are not just destinations on a map, they are inspirations. They are monuments to resilience, carved into the very face of the earth. They prove that even in the most unforgiving corners of the world, humanity can not only survive but thrive, creating beauty and security where none seemed possible. They stand as silent, enduring guardians of history, waiting for the next adventurer to come along and listen to the incredible stories they have to tell. The next time someone tells you something is impossible, just think of a palace on a rock in the sky.